More than 2,000 years ago, China was not one powerful nation. Instead, it was a land of chaos. 7 powerful kingdoms were constantly fighting each other. Kings plotted against kings. Armies marched across fields soaked in blood, and millions lived in fear of war. But from this chaos, a boy was born who would change everything. A boy who would grow up to become the most powerful ruler China had ever seen. His name was Qin Shi Huang, and in just 10 years, he would do what no ruler before him had ever done. He would unite all of China. But his rise to power was far darker and more dangerous than most people know. The story begins in the year 259 BCE. In the powerful state of Qin, a child was born who would one day reshape history. His birth name was Yingzheng, but his early life was far from royal luxury. At the time, his father was not even the king. In fact, his father was a political hostage living in a rival kingdom. In ancient China, powerful states often held royal family members hostage to prevent wars. This meant that the young prince grew up surrounded by danger, uncertainty, and political intrigue. But fate had much bigger plans for him, because when Yingzheng was only 13 years old, something unexpected happened. His father suddenly died, and the young boy was placed on the throne of the Qin kingdom, a 13-year-old king ruling one of the most powerful states in China. But the truth was, he was not really in control. Behind the throne, powerful ministers and generals made the real decisions, and some of them had their own secret plans for power. The young king had enemies everywhere, inside the palace and outside the kingdom. But no one realized yet that this quiet young king would soon become the most feared ruler in China. To understand how extraordinary Yingzheng's achievement was, you first need to understand the world he was born into. This was the time of the Warring States period. For more than 250 years, China had been divided into powerful rival kingdoms. The 7 most powerful states were Qin, Chu, Qi, Yan, Han, Zhao, and Wei. Each kingdom had its own king, each had its own army, and each dreamed of conquering the others. War was constant. Battles between these states were massive. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers would clash on the battlefield. Entire cities were destroyed. Families were wiped out, and alliances changed constantly. One year, 2 kingdoms might be allies. The next year, they could be bitter enemies. This brutal era created some of the most advanced military strategies in history. Great generals and thinkers emerged during this time. One of the most famous was Sun Tzu, the author of the legendary book The Art of War. His strategies about deception, intelligence, and psychological warfare influenced Chinese warfare for centuries. But even with these brilliant strategies, no kingdom had ever managed to conquer all the others. China remained divided until the rise of the young king of Qin, because unlike the other rulers, Yingzheng had a much bigger vision. He didn't want to defeat just one enemy. He wanted to conquer all of them and unite China under a single empire. But first, he would have to survive the deadly politics of his own palace, because the greatest threats to his power were much closer than he realized. Although Yingzheng was the king of Qin, he did not truly control the kingdom yet, because he was still young. The real power was held by a powerful regent named Lu Buwei. Lu Buwei was a brilliant politician and merchant who had helped Yingzheng's father become king. For years, he controlled the government from behind the throne. At first, this helped keep the kingdom stable. But as Yingzheng grew older, he realized something important. If he truly wanted to unite China, he needed absolute power, and that meant removing anyone who stood in his way. Meanwhile, inside the palace, A dangerous conspiracy was forming. A powerful man named Lao Ai secretly gained influence over the Queen Mother. Soon, Lao Ai began gathering his own supporters inside the court. He even built a private army, and eventually, he tried to overthrow the young king. But Yingzheng discovered the plot. In a swift and brutal response, he crushed the rebellion. Lao Ai was captured, his followers were executed, and anyone connected to the conspiracy was severely punished. Even the powerful Lu Boe was forced into exile. For the first time in his life, Yingzheng finally had complete control over the Qin kingdom. Now, nothing stood between him and his greatest ambition, the conquest of all China. With power firmly in his hands, Yingzheng began preparing for the greatest military campaign in Chinese history. But Qin was not just another kingdom. It was already becoming the most powerful military state in China. This transformation had started decades earlier under a revolutionary reformer named Shang Yang. Shang Yang had introduced radical reforms that changed Qin forever. Instead of relying on noble families and aristocrats, he built a system where soldiers were rewarded based on merit. If a soldier performed well in battle, he could rise in rank and gain land, wealth, and status. This created an incredibly disciplined and motivated army. Farmers became soldiers, soldiers became generals, and the Qin army grew stronger every year. Weapons were standardized, armor was improved, military training became brutal and efficient. Soon, Qin possessed one of the most powerful armies the ancient world had ever seen. But Yingzheng also understood something else. Winning wars required more than just soldiers. It required strategy. So he gathered brilliant generals and advisors. Among them were legendary commanders like Wang Jian and Meng Tian. These men would soon lead massive armies across China. Their mission was simple: defeat the 6 rival kingdoms, destroy their armies, and bring all of China under Qin rule. But the road ahead would be filled with massive battles, dangerous betrayals, and one of the most famous assassination attempts in history. Because many rulers across China now feared one thing: the unstoppable rise of Qin, and they would do anything to stop Yingzheng. With absolute power in his hands, Yingzheng was finally ready to begin his grand mission, the conquest of China. At that time, 6 powerful kingdoms still stood between Qin and total domination: Han, Zhao, Wei, Chu, Yan, and Qi. Each kingdom had powerful armies and experienced generals. But Yingzheng believed Qin was stronger than all of them. His strategy was simple but brilliant. Instead of attacking every kingdom at once, he would conquer them one by one. The first target was the small but strategic kingdom of Han. Compared to Qin, Han was weaker, but it controlled important territory. If Qin conquered Han, it would open the path to attack the other kingdoms. So in 230 BCE, the Qin army marched toward Han. Led by powerful generals, Qin forces quickly overwhelmed the kingdom's defenses. The Han army could not stop them. Their capital city fell, and their king surrendered. For the first time in centuries, one of the rival kingdoms had been completely destroyed. Han was gone, and it was now part of Qin territory. This victory shocked the rest of China. The other kingdoms suddenly realized something terrifying. Qin was not just fighting wars anymore. It was absorbing entire nations. But the most powerful kingdoms still remained, and they were preparing for war. As Qin's power grew, fear spread across the other kingdoms. Many rulers believed that if Yingzheng was not stopped, he would conquer them all. So the kingdom of Yan decided to take a desperate step. Instead of fighting Qin's massive army, they would try to kill the king himself. If Yingzheng died, the Qin Empire might collapse. For this dangerous mission, they chose a brave warrior named Jing Ke. His task was simple: travel to Qin's palace, get close to the king and assassinate him. But reaching the king was not easy, so Jin Ke came with a clever plan. He would present Ying Zheng with valuable gifts. One gift was a map of Qin territory. Hidden inside the map was a deadly dagger. When the map was opened, Jin Ke would grab the weapon and strike. Soon, Jin Ke arrived at the royal court of Qin. The king sat on his throne, surrounded by guards and ministers. Jin Ke slowly approached him and began presenting the map. As the scroll was opened, the hidden dagger appeared. In a sudden move, Jin Ke grabbed the weapon and lunged toward the king. For a moment, history itself seemed to stop. If the assassin succeeded, China might never be united. But Ying Zheng reacted quickly. He escaped the attack. Guards rushed forward, and after a chaotic struggle, Jin Ke was killed. The assassination had failed. But the attempt made Ying Zheng even more determined. Now he believed something deeply. The other kingdoms would never stop trying to destroy him, so there was only one solution. He would destroy all of them first, and the wars of conquest would soon become even more brutal. After the failed assassination attempt, Ying Zheng became even more determined to finish his mission. The Qin army continued its relentless campaigns. One by one, the remaining kingdoms began to fall. First came the kingdom of Zhao. Zhao had once been one of Qin's strongest rivals, but years of warfare had weakened it. The Qin army launched a massive invasion. After fierce battles, Zhao's capital was captured. Soon after, Qin forces turned toward the kingdom of Wei. This kingdom had strong defenses, protected by rivers and walls. But Qin engineers used a clever tactic. They redirected a nearby river and flooded the capital city. The defenses collapsed. Wei surrendered. Next came the powerful southern kingdom of Chu. Chu was enormous and had a huge army. At first, Qin suffered defeats, but the experienced general Wang Jian reorganized the Qin forces. With patience and strategy, he eventually crushed the Chu army. The kingdom fell. Soon after, the kingdom of Yan was conquered. And finally, the last independent kingdom remained, the state of Qi, surrounded and isolated. Qi realized resistance was useless. In 221 BCE, Qi surrendered without a major battle. For the first time in history, all of China was united under a single ruler. After conquering the 6 kingdoms, Ying Zheng did something no ruler had ever done before. He declared himself the first emperor of a unified China. He took a new title, Qin Shi Huang, which means the first emperor of Qin. But his ambitions did not stop at conquest. He wanted to transform China forever. So he began a series of massive reforms. He standardized writing across the empire. He created a single currency system. He unified weights and measurements. And he built a vast network of roads to connect the empire. Perhaps his most famous project was the expansion of the Great Wall of China. Massive walls were built to defend China from northern invaders. But Qin Shi Huang was also known for his harsh rule. Books that criticized his government were burned. Scholars who opposed him were punished. Yet despite his controversial methods, his achievements were undeniable. In just 10 years, he had conquered all rival kingdoms and created the foundation of what we now know as China. Even after his death, his legacy remained legendary. Deep beneath the earth, his tomb is guarded by thousands of life-size soldiers known as the Terracotta Army, silent guardians, protecting the emperor for eternity. And today, more than 2,000 years later, the story of Qin Shi Huang remains one of the most incredible tales in world history. A young king who rose from chaos